Hi there, Rick Ragosa here on another session of Mastering the Guitar. In the last episode, as a reoccurring theme, I'm encouraging you to keep up with your dexterity, moving your fingers. You get a tennis ball or some foam and work on creating tension, even squeezing the neck. You know, your arms and your forearms are muscles and they need to be conditioned. Your fingers, it's very important. If you don't warm up, you know, you're going to suffer fatigue and they're going to be sore and all these things. I've experienced everything from sometimes overplaying to the point where my forearms just ache and I can't play for a week because it just hurts. And that's just stupid, from not having warm-ups and not having little spaces in between just to rest the muscles. Okay? So it's important that they're muscles. You want to train them to be up there, but you don't want to over-fatigue them, so you need to exercise. Okay? It's just understandable. And then this exercise we want to directly relate to playing the instrument. Okay? What I'm going to do for you real quick here is just run through the open tuning. It's pretty close. And just give you some kind of reference. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as your instrument's kind of tuned and we're getting that down. We're going to spend a little bit more time, maybe a whole session, on all the possible tunings. But at this stage of the game, well, you don't need to worry about it so much. Just make it close. The only thing is, don't be cranking too high because you're going to be breaking strings, okay? This is the starting note, and it's an E note. All right, the next note is A. Next note is a D. Next is a G. Next is a B. And the next is an E. Same as the top string, only 2 octaves higher, okay? And that's a basic diatonic tuning, and it's all relative to each other. We'll get into that about fourths and a minor third and back to fourths. So actually your G to B is basically a third, okay? So it's fourths, a third, and then fourths again. Okay? Now, the whole focus of learning to play the instrument is understanding the structure of its tuning or the arrangements of notes, because that's why we get certain shapes to look the way they do. For those of you who can play a little bit and know a few chords already, there's reasons why your fingers are held in certain ways, okay? And we're going to look into that a little bit more in depth in this session. The most important thing is understanding your major scale, okay? So we're going to try that again by having a look at the major scale. And keep it in mind, at the end of the program we'll be bringing up the box number where you can mail in, and there'll be paperwork available that clearly illustrates the patterns and shapes that I'm talking about, and something that you can just have in front of you for, you know, to reaffirm the shapes and what you're doing. And before you know it, you'll be retaining this where you won't even need the sheets, okay? So the idea is to just sit back, relax. It's not a frustrating experience. This is basic information to be a guide on helping you as you explore this whole wondrous thing about learning how to play the guitar. Okay? So the major scale is the most important scale. The premise of a scale is that it's 7 notes and it compiles the first 7 letters of the alphabet. A key refers to a zone or a range that you're playing on. Pianos have certain ranges, certain keys, okay? And it's important to understand certain fundamental facts on what a key is or how we can begin to use them and understand it. It's a range of music, and how we catalog it in our mind is using the letter system or the first 7 letters. If we are in the key of A, then our root note or tonal center, tonic note, our starting note is an A. And then all the notes become relative off of that point. Now it's important that you understand this because that formula is what's used in making chords. Those shapes that you know what a C chord is, well, that isn't accidental. It's based off of a specific formula that tends to lend itself to that shape, okay? And for example, with C, I can play it in a number of different areas by combining the notes that are involved in making a C triad, okay? And that information I attain from knowing what the major scale is and applying those shapes, okay? So, believe it or not, it's all interrelated, and it's maybe not at this point, but it simplifies the whole understanding of what's going on in music, okay? First off, let's just look at what a major scale looks like. Okay? So we're going to be playing in the second position, starting on the top string. And here we go again, quickly, one time. And I'll deal with the numbers. The letters, depending on which key you're playing in, change. But the numbers always remain the same. Meaning that a major third here, in G, it's the same shape, no matter what key I'm playing in. G, C, A, whatever it is. And so it's important, once you learn these shapes, you can transpose those shapes to 12 different keys. So like even after this episode, once you learn how to play the major scale, you could play it in 12 different keys, okay, just by moving your starting point or by starting on a different root note, okay? So let's go back to the key of G, okay? And we're going to be looking at the major scale. Now this goes, the numbers of the fingers, I'm going to give you first one time, okay? It's 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Okay? First octave. Second octave. 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, and then 1, 2. Okay? Backwards. Alright, very important scale to learn. Because now we're going to apply some of the fundamental information on not only figuring out what notes we play, but also how we use the major scale to derive the places we play those notes, okay? Structured songs or any type of basic beginning, middle, bridge, and ending are compiled. Any kind of music has some structural rules, okay? It's the same thing with literature when they call it the iambic or triambic rhythms. We could get extensive into the formulas involved with that, but what they mean by that is structured framework. It can be a type of A, B, A, C, A structure, okay? Each one of the letters occupying a section of music or a type of approach to something. It can be A is like the head of the song, B starts to, it could be the same head but it's a little tense, and then to C goes out a little bit, and then back to A, okay? And there really is about 8 different cadences that man has used over the last even 100 years safely. So when you get familiar with various structures, there are only a few, and if you're into any particular style of music, for example, country has improved and got quite complex over the years with guys like Ray Flack and Albert Lee, who are just hot pickers, Nashville session guitar players, and they've incredible display of artistry and taste. But with that in mind, you know, the sky's the limit as far as complexity, but from what has been actually used, you know, there's only a few different cadences that have been applied, so by equipping yourself with that information, you can play most country tunes that have been written, okay? And instead of just sitting there trying to memorize, okay, which chord was that and where does it go, just by knowing the numeric association of the song, 1, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, whatever, 2, 5, 1s, it gives you the basic guidelines, tell me which key it is, and you'll be able to figure out the numbers by knowing the major scale, okay? Now, chords are based off a formula, okay? And I'm going to be bringing this up and stressing it quite a bit because it's the whole understanding of why your chord shapes look the way you do. There are 5 basic families: major, minor, augmented, diminished, and dominant seventh. And each one of those families has its own formula. The major formula, okay, and if you've got a pen and paper, write it down. If not, videotape these series, find out in your listings when they're going to be on, and tape them, because it's important that you know how to get that information or have it accessible to you. A major formula is 1, 3, 5. So no matter what key I'm playing in, if it's C or G, right, D, a 1, 3, 5, 8 is always going to be the same, okay? And if I play them in group together, all right, in whatever form, it doesn't matter exactly the impressions that you want to play because the underlying formula is the same, okay? A minor formula or family is 1, flat, 3, 5. Flat means that you lower a note, a particular note, a half step, or one fret on the guitar. A sharp means that you raise a note one fret, or basically what they call a half step, okay, on the guitar. So there is what they call enharmonic tones, where the sharps and flats. A sharp is the same note as B flat, okay? Sharps and flats are just another term that's used for subtly fine-tuning in the places you play certain notes and what's actually going on. For now, we don't need to worry about it too much, except that you need to know what a flat does and what a sharp does, okay? And it'll become applicable, and you'll understand it when the time arises, all right? So in any particular key, if I take the first note, which is my root note of that key, the third note, and the fifth note, and play those three notes together, no matter where I play them on the guitar, that will always be a major chord. And it doesn't matter which key I'm in either. It can be the key of C, the key of D, whatever, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It can be any one of those keys. It can be B flat or F sharp, okay, E flat. It doesn't matter the key. The number relationship is always going to be the same. And so I found that instead of trying to help you hold your fingers in certain places and, okay, do this and monkey see, monkey do kind of stuff, equipping the student with the information of how a chord is built and how it applies to other chords is the most helpful thing that I can do. Not only do you not need to be strung out then for lessons over 2 years, but then you can be equipped with the information necessary to do your own discovery. You might not like this C here, so you want to play it up here, or maybe here. All right? Well, you can figure that out just by knowing the formula, and then by getting those notes that comprise that chord, finding those notes over the fretboard. There's some pretty weird players out there who don't just play boxed, just on those two strings. They'll play one note up here and another note down here and here. Okay? And the important thing about that is that when you know the formulas, it is those notes that comprise the chords, and that's all you need to know. There's no guesswork, there's no mysteries, and there's no confusion. It's that or it isn't. Okay? There's no forgiveness in music. It's either there or it's not, okay? So if you're dealing with a major chord, it is 1, 3, 5. A minor chord is 1, flat 3, 5. Okay? And I'm going to look into those at this time. We're going to just delve a little bit into that. But just to start getting you a little more familiar, the dominant seventh family is 1, 3, 5, flat 7. The augmented family is a 1, 3, sharp 5. You notice it always starts with a root note. And the diminished is 1, flat 3, flat 5. Okay? And again, write this information down, because if it doesn't make sense to you now, it will as you start getting into some of this, memoric patterns, the major scale. Once you can get that memorized and get your thinking process along the lines of a major scale, okay, then these shapes are going to make much more sense, and it all begins to slowly chisel that confusion, and it becomes clearer to you why you're doing that. And it's really the information on where you should start. You should know why you're doing certain things, when, for what reasons, because it doesn't make sense to me to have someone, mindlessly hold their finger someplace and make certain sounds and then change, when that's not doing anybody good. Now, he might be able to play the song at the time and around the campfire, it might be great, but overall, it isn't a very productive or efficient way of applying the information to the fretboard, okay? So, let's pick an example. Let's go to the key of C, because that's the most natural key without any sharps or flats. And without knowing your response, I'm going to ask certain questions and giving you kind of like a little quiz type of thing here. The first question would be, what would be our root note in the key of C? Okay? Now after you're done all the silly answers, the answer is you start with the same note that the key that you're in. So if we're in the key of C, we start with a C note. All right? Now we're going to be playing and deriving a C major scale. Okay? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the major triad is 1, 3, and 5 of that scale. So you start with your root note, and now let's do it without the guitar and just do it in our heads, okay? So we have the C note. That's number 1, okay? In fact, I wish we had more C notes. Okay, just joking. From here, we start with the root note. That's C, number 1, okay? Well, then we count to number 2, which is D. Number 3 is E, all right? So 1 and 3 is our C note and our E note. Okay, now we want the 5. So the thing that's another sort of a point to bring up right now is nothing just happens. Okay, you just don't have, you're not just jumping out there and don't have any reference points. And that's why, first off, in accordance with this process of thinking I'm talking about, you start with your root note. Well, that's my guide, my pivot, my tonal center. That's the whole key to what I'm doing. So if I know that that's C, then the other notes become relative, not only numerically, but with the letters, to that root note. And then they have their place within that key and make sense within that key. G is a 1 in the key of G, but it's a 5 in the key of C. Okay? It's the same letters, it's how they're applied. And this is what I'm trying to convey to you. It's the thinking process that alleviates the confusion and gets it clear in your mind what's going on. So we need a 1, 3, 5. We've got the 1, which is C, D, E is 3, F, and G is 5. So our 1, 3, 5 is C, E, and G. Okay? And the important thing, record these things. In case I'm going too fast, you can play back later. All right? By knowing your C, E, and G, okay, when you've got your sheets, or if you have a guideline book or something that gives you the names of the notes here, simply, quite simply, all you have to do after knowing that is find where there's a C note, okay, where there's a G note, okay, and where there's an E. So we got C, E, and G. Well, those three notes together is a C chord, okay? Now, the only thing that's different about other chords is that we can expand the range. Let's play a E, C, G, E, C, G, and all 6 strings. And that's a full C chord, okay? At this time, it's not so much that I want you to learn how to play a C chord, but that you learn how it was made, okay? There'll be plenty of time to actually show you where your fingers go and do the whole monkey see, monkey do thing, okay? The important thing is to start, you need to know how to make a chord, what a chord consists of. And this is the exact information that's necessary, knowing the formulas. Now, sticking in the key of C, okay, for the sake of comparison, let's play a C minor chord. Now, the minor formula was 1, flat 3, 5. Now, what does a flat do? It lowers that note a half step. So we've got, for example, a C. Now, the third note was an E. Okay. And then the fifth note was a G. Flat 3, 5 would be a C, D, E flat, and our G. Okay, so let's play the notes there. We've got a C. This was normally our E, but flattening it, you lower it a half step. Okay, so we've got C, E flat, and G. And now you're beginning to hear the difference between a major chord, a very full, warm, absence of tension chord, to starting now to get a little more tense. And to interject this at this point, all music in a basic physiological type of approach, meaning the fundamentals involved with oscillations, strings vibrating at certain rates and at various rates, everything that we hear in the human audio spectrum comprises of some basic principles. The one that's very important with music and the concept of controlled silence is what I call tension and release, okay? And everything basically refers to or relates to that form of playing. We either play chords that are the least amount of tension, okay, or just natural, major chords, to starting to add notes or play certain formulas, like diminished is really tense. Okay? It's really very tense. So, in fact, it's intense. Okay. the thing is, each one of the formulas offer a different aspect to that tension and release cycle. Augmented has its own form of, it's a raised fifth. Okay, minor, as we've heard, has its own type of approach, and we use it accordingly. Minor chord to a major chord. And in fact, those chords, minor, we can play in what they call, harmony, basic block form, or together, or we could play them what they call arpeggiated, broken form. Okay, so we got a basic structure like this. You Yngwie Malmsteen fans out there, you can recognize some of the sounds. There's an A minor triad, or an F triad. Okay. And the thing is, when you know the notes, you don't necessarily be restricted to any particular place of playing them. You can play them anywhere you want, but it comes back to having an understanding of the formulas, okay, and how they directly apply. If you know the triads, you can play arpeggios to, when your buddy's playing the chords, you play the arpeggios, and that's the whole foundation of what music's all about. And as you create, say for example, you start getting into diminished or dominant, you're creating a natural tension by raising notes or lowering notes, okay, the sharp and flat. And to kind of reaffirm this, we've got 5 basic families: major, minor, augmented, diminished, and dominant seventh, okay? And each one has its own formula, and that's what you need to know, all right? Majors 1, 3, 5. No matter where you play a 1, 3, 5, it will always be a major chord. 1, 3, 5. I lower the third, I have a minor chord, okay? If I lower the third and the fifth, I get a diminished chord. If I keep the third and have a sharp 5, that's an augmented. And dominant seventh is when I play the 1, 3, 5, and you throw a flat 7 in there. Okay? And see, it's important to understand that. Say, for example, we're going to be getting into how you take a melody or extract certain notes or numeric patterns from the major scale to produce basic lead lines or phrases. They're commonly referred to as voices or phrases. For example, I've been using a structured format for teaching, and I call this particular pattern the boogie pattern because it's been associated with the boogie-woogie kind of stuff. And what that is a 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? Well, you might say immediately, what's that guy talking about? Well, it's basically very simple because it's relative to information we've already covered. We've got a major scale. We'll do this in C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Well, I'm going to play the 1, 3, 5, 6, and then lower the 7th a half step, flat 7. There's 5 notes there. By playing them forward and back, okay, we get what I call the boogie pattern. Okay? Well, that's just a basic pattern. Now, if we're going to apply that to a song, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can use the 1, the 4, and the 5 as our basis, right? So we can play the boogie pattern on the 1, the 4, then the 5, back to the 1. Okay? what I'm showing you there is that sounds just don't happen by themselves. Tension and release cycles are created deliberately, okay? It's the intention of the artist to choose certain notes that either give you as kind of an absence of tension or a fullness of tension. And really what music is tension and release, okay? All the band members are either working with each other or they're playing off of each other to create tension and come back, okay? So start your thinking process that the number system, the formulas, are the root patterns to how this tension and release are created, okay? So if we're in the key of C, we start with our C note, C, E, and G, 1, 3, 5. Well, there's what the components of a C major chord. If we are in the key of F, F is our root note. It would be F, G, returns back to A again, because we only have 7 letters of the alphabet. So it goes F, A, B, C, all right? F, A, and C is what an F note is, or an F chord. Now the thing is, those of you who know how to play an F chord right now. Okay? Now if you know the names of the notes, or if as you've been informed here, we'll be giving you a box number that you can send in for the papers for this, for the sheets that give you the little black dots that equip you with the shapes. You'll notice on the grid the names of the notes throughout the fretboard. You'll notice that you're playing an F, an A, a C, and an F, okay? 1, 3, 5, played over and over again in any arrangement, is a major chord. If we take the third, which is A, and lower it, A flat, we have a minor chord, okay? All the shapes that you know how to play, or are learning how to play, come from knowing this formula, okay? No matter where they are. A D chord. Okay? It's an arrangement, they call them voices or inversions. It's an arrangement of those 3 notes, okay? Minors 1 flat 3 5, okay? Majors 1 3 5. And there's 3 other families, and once you get those down, everything is within the perimeters of those, okay? So start your thinking on knowing the key that you're on, okay? And start equipping yourself with not so much the names of the chords as the number relationship between each other. If you know how to play songs already, take a pencil and go back to the songbook and say, okay, if I'm in the key of C, now most music would usually start in the same key that it's in. There are exceptions. There's a very good indication, though, 99.9, that it will, if it isn't starting in the same note that it's in, it will end as a form of resolving. Tension, 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 resolve, okay? And dealing with the 1800s and the church being largely responsible for a number of the cadences we use, you can hear that kind of A, that's a 4-1. Or a 5, 4, 1, okay? It's tension, tension, resolve, all right? And that comes back from the major scale, knowing that when I stray from the root note, I'm creating natural tension. Coming back to the root note is relieving that tension, okay? Or, as used in music application, resolving the tension, all right? And the same thing with licks. Okay? If I want to play something that's really kind of melodic, all right, very light, well then I would use a major scale and kind of keep it light, and that's, even if I'm using thirds, keeping it light, and there's a minimal amount of tension there. If I want to start creating tension, that's when we get into things like flat thirds. Okay? So as we stray, flat thirds, flat fifths, that gets into greater tension, resolve. Okay? So keep that in your mind, the basic formulas, all right? And don't forget, keep up with your finger exercises. It's the most important thing of your development. If you can't move your fingers, it's going to be very hard to apply it on the instrument. All right? Hope you enjoyed yourself. We'll get more into it next time. The box number is 369, Community 10, and label it Mastering the Guitar. And we'll see you next time.